Last night, Republican Senator Ted Cruz and Democratic Congressman Beto O'Rourke, both from Texas, won each of their primaries, meaning that this fall they're going to be facing off against each other in the midterms for a seat in the Senate. Now, before all this, Ted Cruz acted like O'Rourke didn't even exist, even though O'Rourke clearly was leading in the Democratic race. But as soon as Beto O'Rourke won his race, Cruz came out on the attack and released this ad.
If you're gonna run in Texas, you can't be a liberal man, 'cause liberal thought is not the spirit of a Lone Star man.
I remember reading stories, liberal Robert wanted to fit in, so he changed his name to Beto and hit it with a grin. Beto wants those open borders and wants to take our guns. Not a chance on earth he'll get a vote from millions of Texans.
All right, so right off the bat, I have to admit that that's a pretty catchy song. And it's a pretty catchy song because it's based on a real song by the country band Alabama. And the reason I know that is because I grew up listening to country music. So, as far as, marketing is concerned, I think it's a good ad. But if you actually listen to the words, there's no real substance to Ted Cruz's version of this great song. So here's the extent of the quotes. If you're going to run in Texas, you can't be a liberal man, 'cause liberal thought is not the spirit of a Lone Star man. They rhymed man with man. That's how uncreative the songwriting process is in a Ted Cruz commercial. Who would have thought? So, do people fall for this? I mean, is simply calling somebody a liberal, is that enough to swing hundreds of thousands of voters to one side? I mean, maybe it is. Maybe I'm just out of touch. And simple lines like this work. But I think that Texas is getting a little smarter. And the problem in Texas isn't necessarily that people are afraid of the liberals, but it's that liberal voters don't get out and vote. And the reason they haven't gotten out and voted is because there really hasn't been a candidate that truly speaks for the people. So you get people that are conservatives coming out in big numbers because conservatives vote in a large part regardless of who's running, but Democrats usually only come out and vote if there is somebody that excites them to come out and vote. So hopefully Beto O'Rourke will generate that excitement. But let's get to the next line here. So, liberal Robert wanted to fit in, so he changed his name to Beto and hit it with a grin. I don't, is this... I don't know what this is supposed to do. So, Beto O'Rourke, his real name is Robert. Okay? That's even worse of a reason to vote for Ted Cruz. Well, I'm voting for Ted Cruz because Beto O'Rourke changed his name from Robert. If he was Robert O'Rourke, I would have voted for him, but Beto O'Rourke can't do it. Does this... Okay, whatever. I'll be fair. The ad also mentions that Beto wants to open borders, or wants open borders, and he wants to take your guns. More common fear-mongering tactics from the right wing. Again, tactics that I hope aren't still working. So, yes, Beto O'Rourke is better on immigration. He actually wants immigration reform. That doesn't mean he wants open borders. And yes, he wants some proper gun reforms. That doesn't mean he wants to take your guns. I hope... Look, I'm saying hope a lot because I really hope that people are smart enough to see through this. But the onus right now is really going to be on Beto O'Rourke to be able to campaign in a way that speaks to people. And so far, it seems like he has. And I'll get to a bit more of that in a minute. But first, so let's get to one of the reasons that Ted Cruz is so scared about Beto O'Rourke isn't because he's a liberal man and isn't because he wants open borders and to take your guns. No. O'Rourke has raised more money than Ted Cruz. That's why Ted Cruz is like, oh shit, this guy's for real. So this from the Hill. O'Rourke, an El Paso resident, raised $2.3 million in the first 6 weeks of 2018, compared to Cruz's $800,000 over the same time period. So Beto O'Rourke, apart from having a better message, which again I'll get to in a minute, he also has the money advantage. Now, this is an advantage that usually favors people who take corporate cash and are just sucking up to lobbyists. In this case, Beto O'Rourke is actually not taking corporate PAC money. So his money comes completely from small and large donors in terms of individual contributions. He's not taking PAC money. So it shows you right there that compared to Ted Cruz, who is... Ted Cruz has to be maybe the worst in Congress in terms of sucking up to special interests. He is a lapdog for Wall Street and the oil and gas industry. He takes tons of money from those industries and then does what they want him to do. So Ted Cruz is not a voice for Texas. Ted Cruz is a voice for his big money donor interests. Now, let's get to Beto O'Rourke's response to this ad. So he was on CNN, and this is what he had to say.
Do you plan to compose a punk rock song to counter that jingle?
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue to meet with and work with my fellow Texans on the big issues that we want Texas to lead on. We are the defining immigrant state. We should be leading the way on immigration reform, not being the sole senator, as Ted Cruz was, to turn his back on Texas and this opportunity to lead on an issue that we know better than anyone else in any other part of the country. I want to make sure that Texas goes from being the least insured state in the country to leading the way to ensure that every single American can see a doctor or a provider or afford their medication so that they can live to their full potential, finish their education, go to work, pay taxes, create a business, hire more Americans.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we get our democracy back and return it to the people and get corporations and PACs and lobbyists and special interests out of the halls of Congress. And running this campaign in the most grassroots fashion that we've seen in Texas, all 254 counties, relying on people instead of PACs and corporations. That's the way to do it.
Why aren't you taking my punk rock bait?
Because I just don't think that's what folks in Texas want us to focus on. I mean, we can get into name calling and talk about why the other person's such an awful guy, or we can focus on the big things that we want to do for the future of our country, for the generations that will succeed us. And this is the most critical moment in the most important year of our lifetimes, and we've absolutely got to get it right. So we can focus on the small, mean, petty stuff, or we can be big, bold, courageous, and confident. I think that is Texas. That's our distinction as a state. That's our opportunity to lead, and that's the way I'm going to stay focused going forward in this campaign.
Yeah.
So before I get to my response to Beto O'Rourke's video here, I have to mention something that I forgot to mention before the video, and that's that Ted Cruz's name is not Ted Cruz. So he attacks Beto O'Rourke for changing his first name from Robert. Ted Cruz, his real name is Rafael Edward Cruz, but he goes by Ted Cruz. So, you know, if you're one of those people that are basing your vote based on people that change their name, you should be aware that both of these candidates have changed their name. So I guess you have to vote independent now. But I'm going to assume that there's not many of you type of voters out there. Now, let's get to my response to Beto O'Rourke's response to Ted Cruz's video of him. Now, I love how Beto O'Rourke completely ignores the attack ad and gets to the issues that people actually care about. So he brings up immigration reform, which is a big issue, especially in Texas. He brings up how he wants more people to be insured in under healthcare, under the Affordable Care Act, and hopefully he wants to push for Medicare for all. And he also brings up the corporate influence of money on politics, which I think that will be the main driver to get people out to vote for him in the midterms, because this is one that affects both sides. Both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are affected by corporate influence on politics, by corporate money on politics. So when you have a politician, especially a national politician, out there speaking out against that, that's an issue that makes you stand out above and beyond anyone else in the race. So that's going to be a main driver, I think, for Beto O'Rourke. Maybe I should just call him Robert. It'll be a lot easier. Robert O'Rourke. So if O'Rourke wins, not only would it be good for Texas and the country, it would also be good for me, because it means that I won't have to see Ted Cruz's smug-ass face ever again. Hey, if you like this video, hit that subscribe button below and consider throwing me a few bucks on Patreon at patreon.com/therationalnational or therationalnational.com/join.